Hello, my name is Zachariah with Old Man Gaming. You have decided to listen to another Snap Judgment review. What is a Snap Judgment review if you've never listened before? Well, I get about 5 to 10 hours with the game I'm reviewing. I think reviewers nowadays get a little caught up in trying to 100% a game or complete it before, or get close to completing it before they do the review. Forget what it's like to play it right off the bat. So I get about 5 to 10 hours with a game, and I'm just trying to give you a good idea as to whether you're going to enjoy it or not. Now, that disclaimer out of the way, I have to say, I actually finished this game before I got this review done. So I guess this is a full review because I finished the game, which rarely happens to me. But in any case, because of all of those reasons, I don't give scored reviews. Instead, I'll tell you what the game is overview, and then I'll tell you what the pros and the cons of the game are and my point of view. And then I'll tell you whether or not I'll be sticking with the game outside of the purposes of this review. And then we'll wrap it up. Sorry about my voice. I'm pretty sick right now, which is why there's no podcast this week if you're a podcast listener. But I wanted to get something out for content, so I figured I'd force myself to knock this review out. So bear with me, everybody. So what am I reviewing today? I'm reviewing South of Midnight. Like I said, I actually finished this game. You can complete it in about 7 to 9 hours, depending on how fast you kind of like burn through the thing. And yeah, it is an interesting game. I cannot help but be reminded gameplay wise of Prince of Persia, the old ones like Warrior Within and Sands of Time. There is a healthy dose of platforming intermixed with combat scenes. So you'll go to a combat scene, you'll do that combat scene, then you'll move through platforming scenes until you get to another combat scene. And yeah, the game itself centers around Hazel, this kind of like just like senior in high school sort of girl in the deep south who kind of loses her mother in the beginning of the story, not to death, but loses her and kind of goes on a quest to find her that becomes magical and mystical really fast. I don't want to give away too much more than that because it will become spoilers really fast since this game is pretty short and to the point. But I'll say this, all of the plot, all of the story, the aesthetic, all of it centers around southern myths and folktale, like the Rougarou, Two-Toed Tom, the giant crocodile. You're led through most of the game by a giant talking catfish, all sorts of stuff like that, which, in my personal opinion, I had never had any experience with any of these legends or folklore before now. I'm a Yankee, born and bred. That being said, I found this really interesting and different, which we'll get into in the pros and cons. But it's very different from what you're used to, like story and plot wise, and it kind of sets this game apart because the other things are a little bit paint by numbers in certain places. Nonetheless, there's great story and writing here. There's great dialogue. It's a very narrative driven game, though there are a lot of points where you can explore the scenery off the beaten path to find upgrade currency. And I will say they do a good job of anytime you can find off the beaten path, you're going to find something. There's never just like, oh, I jumped around this rock and there's nothing there. There's almost always something there. But there is a small amount of, the currency goes to the upgrades of your abilities. In mostly combat related situations, you get your powers pretty early, which is unlike some of the other games. And then from then on, you can just buy upgrades as you go along and collect the right amount of currency. There is an insanely well done custom musical track to this game as well, which I did try to sample, which I'll try and stick at the very end of the review footage if you want to stick around and listen to one of the songs. But we'll get to that in the pros and cons. You know what? I'm going to switch right to the pros and cons because without giving spoilers, I can't really I can't really say anymore. I will say, like I said, as far as gameplay goes, it gets you in pretty fast, which I wasn't expecting. I was expecting a lot more slow narration building up to it. It gets you in pretty fast, and it's a very Prince of Persia-y platformer. Like, you platform through scenes to get to the next combat scene, and there's a handful of bosses. You know what? There's one other thing I do want to talk about before we get into pros and cons, and that is the tone of the game is incredibly dark. If you're somebody who is bothered by really dark, sad stories, you might want to steer clear of this. Like, we're talking about lost or dead children, we're talking about murder, we're talking about abuse, marital abuse, patriarchal abuse. Like, there is, like, they very much took a culture that tends to be steeped in abuse and kind of made this game about fixing that abuse. I think I really appreciate that. That being said, it was a lot more dark than I expected right off the rip. The stories you deal with are pretty heartbreaking, and more than one brought a tear to my eye as I, watched them unfold. So just keep in mind that the subject matter is very dark, even though everything looks very cartoony. All right, so now let's get into pros and cons. I always start positive first, so pros. The script writing, the aesthetic, the world are my first one and probably the best one. They're stellar. The writing of I am not a big narration guy. In fact, anybody who's watched this channel for a really long time would look at this game and go, this is not something Zach looks for in a game. And you'd be mostly correct. This is definitely something that spoke to the younger Zach and me, who loved the Prince of Persia games, who loved the Max Payne. And it was something that I wanted to try. Although nowadays I find in my older age, when I try those games, I enjoy them for a bit and then I get bored really fast and I move back to one of my procedurally generated create your own character sandboxes. That being said, this game never overstays its welcome. Like I said, 7 to 9 hours depending on how long you take, and every cutscene was interesting. I never found it boring. I never wanted to skip through the dialogue. Even the written pieces of lore, I kind of wanted to read. There were very few of them that I was just like, not today, and skipped through them. And that's a testament to writing. That really is a testament to the writing of this game. The last thing I reviewed was Atomfall. Very different way to do a narrative open world. But I'm kind of surprised at how much two very heavily narrative games have influenced my tastes this year. And this was one of them. The writing just transcends your taste in a lot of ways. If you can deal with the darker themes, you're going to enjoy this. You're going to get pulled into these worlds and these characters who are very three-dimensional. And I'm not even talking about just your main character. Every side character, even the bosses that you think are just one-off bosses, are three-dimensional characters that you get full origins for, that you can empathize with, and that is really, truly a great sign of some good narration. My next one, I'm going to just piggyback off that one and go right into the music of this game. So, I'm going to just define how this works. Every chapter that you're in is like a level. As you work through the chapter, the music slowly builds. So, like, when you first started, it's silence. As you start to move through, you'll start to hear some twangs or some background singing of something that might be a song. Fast forward all the way to when you're getting to the very end or the ultimate scenario of the thing, whether it be a boss fight or a big climb or something, you're getting these full tracked songs that the entirety of everything you've been playing through has slowly built into, which is just phenomenal. I was expecting a lot of licensed blues, country, bluegrass sort of stuff. And you get a lot of country. I'm not country, bluegrass, blues, all of that. But it's all handwritten specifically to the chapters, which I found just so interesting. Like, I think the sample I got is about Benji the tree. There is a story about a tree that's a person. I don't want to do spoilers. It's explained why he's a tree. But by the time you get to the tree, the entire choir is in. The singer is singing about Benji the tree. It's the entire storyline that you've kind of uncovered so far, wrapped up into a musical track. I think it's so cool. Such a cool way to do. If anything, this is got to be best soundtrack of the year in my opinion. And I'm going to just piggyback right off that in the voice work. This is some of the best voice work I've ever seen. It was hard not to just immediately for our future Game Awards nominate like 3 characters from this. I'm not sure that I won't. The catfish, the guy who voices the catfish, which I think is Robert Wilson, something like that, is amazing. Absolutely amazing. Phenomenal work. Hazel is really great and interesting. She's not just this like cardboard cutout heroine. She has a lot of lines. And I especially like how much she trash talks when she's in a fight, which is really cool. It kept me very connected to her the entire time. But all of the voice work, everything, all of the side characters, they're all just phenomenal. They could not have picked a better cast for this game. And then finally, a little bit more of a technical thing. I really enjoyed how they gave you all the powers in the beginning. One of the things that I just would always get so irritated with, like those old Prince of Persia games, is you get the best power right at the very end when you only have like a level to use it. Whereas with this, you get all the powers in like the first, I think, 2 or 3 chapters, and then you're good. That's it. Then you can just upgrade them. I think that's a really cool way to do it. It also puts more back onto the finding ways to upgrade them and unlocking more story as your goal instead of like finding new powers. I think it was really cool decision to do that, and I enjoyed it. I liked it. I liked that right off the bat. I've got all my spells, I got all my combat abilities. Now I get to upgrade them and use them accordingly. Alright, so let's move into the cons. Okay, so my biggest con with a bullet. When I look on Steam, when I look on Xbox, and it may change by the time this review comes up, but when I was looking on them, the storage requirement was 60 gigabytes. It did not say SSD. It just said 60 gigabytes. My computer met every other minimum requirement of this game. But if I played it on my spinning hard drive, it did not work. It fundamentally did not work. Like I could get it to play sometimes. The cutscenes would be herky-jerky. There would be a lot of screen tearing. There would be a lot of weird missed frames. I edited all sorts of stuff in my graphical stuff, potatoed it, didn't potato it, and I just could not get it to work. I couldn't figure out what was wrong with it until finally I decided I'm going to just try to move it over to my SSD and see if that fixed it. Lo and behold, for the most part, it fixed it. I still had some glitchiness. I still had a couple of frame tears. And in fairness, my computer is a little outdated. I'm trying to kind of keep this sucker running as long as I can without making it super high end. But it meets all the requirements on either page. So I have to give a huge con here, because if the game doesn't work isn't really playable, then you should not, like, the minimum requirements should be higher. I should be informed that this requires an SSD. You need to put that on there. You need to put that in the specs. And that's a big miss for me, because it wasn't on the Xbox Game Pass page, which, in fairness, the Xbox Game Pass page usually does not give all the specs correctly. But I went to the Steam page for it, which usually gives all of the stuff correctly, and it didn't require an SSD. Now, again, this could have changed since I recorded this review and when it comes out, but overall that's what I saw, and that's obnoxious to me. You gotta write that in, you gotta put that in, you gotta say that. We're not so far removed from spinning hard drives that everybody's gonna be running it without a spinning hard drive. So, big tech complaint for me, and honestly the tech complaints are really all my complaints for this game. Every other aspect of this game is fun and interesting, but I had a bunch of clipping issues. The big clipping issues are, there will be places where you should be able to walk through and you'll just get stuck. There will be places where I'm in a fight and I get pushed up against something and I'm just stuck there until I jump the 7th or 8th time. There's a lot of places that look like you can jump to them and you can't, and that causes you to die. They are just not very clear on what you can jump to, what you can't, and the environment and how you can interact with it. And I found that a little bit irritating. There would be nothing that would take me out of something more than when I think I found a hidden path, and lo and behold, it's just me jumping off a cliff to my death, because there's ground physically there, but the ground isn't actually anything. It's just kind of like a picture of ground. whereas it looks exactly like the ground that I've landed on before. Especially in a game that pushes you to search off the beaten path to get the health upgrades, to get the power upgrades. This clipping issue was just a huge miss for me. I mean, and granted, I'll say this, if you're playing this game, it is not going to be something that will kill your enjoyment of it. It certainly didn't. I was much more irritated with the whole startup, getting it to work, SSD thing, than I was with this clipping issue. It's very annoying, and I feel like it's kind of a miss when you're doing something like a platformer. You have to really be very clear on what the platforms are, and they weren't at all times. Nonetheless, still a really great game. I enjoyed it. And again, I don't think the clipping issue is really going to take away from your enjoyment of it too much. It's just every once in a while you're going to think you can jump to something. You can't. You go off the cliff and you go, well, that's stupid. All right, so whether or not I'm going to stick with this. I'm going to say no, but I'm only going to say no because I finished it. I finished the game. The game is short. It's short, straight, to the point. And honestly, with a narrative game like this, I really appreciate that nowadays. You have these games like Uncharted, God of War, those kind of games that just they suffer from bloat. Like it's like people are trying to force them to be huge, get 20 and 30 hours out of them. And a narrative game like this that works in chapters, that's almost basically like a level that you're working through, should not be that long. It shouldn't overstay its welcome. I like the fact that like 4 or 5 sittings, I was done with this. I didn't feel like, it never became a slog for me. It never became I need to get through this, but I don't really want to anymore. I want to move to this next thing. And I think that AAA action platformer games like this should take a note from Compulsion here and make their games a little bit shorter. I mean, the problem is that, then they'd have to charge only $40 for them, and they don't want to do that. But I think overall, it really made this kind of game a much more enjoyable experience for me. So there you guys go. Like I said, I'm going to try and add a little musical sample at the end of this for a couple of seconds if you want to stick around. But otherwise, you can tell me if I got it wrong or right in the comments below. You can also reach us on our Discord. You can influence all of our shows from there. The link is in the description below. You can also contact us on Facebook at Old Man Gaming GH, on X at Old Man Gaming 9, on Blue Sky at Axiom Games LLC / Old Man Gaming. And as long as you guys keep watching and listening, we'll keep making them. We'll see you guys next time.
He was my brother, Benji his name. He saw things different, he was my shame. And I said goodbye, I said farewell. I took my hammer, my ticket to hell. The locals got angry, left traps out for him. Threw rocks, started shouting, his prospects were grim. Easy to blame Benji.